Welcome to Can I Speak to Your Product Manager, the nitty-gritty with your favorite PMs. I'm Kyle Kolich, Vice President of Product at Zuora.
And I'm Lucas Weber, Director of Product Management at Zuora. On today's episode, we have Akhil Keshap, Senior Product Manager at eBay, and we're going to start off the show by talking about his recent Never Have I Ever moment, as well as his best tips and insights for being a successful PM in the ever-evolving landscape of product management. But first, a word from our sponsors.
This podcast is brought to you by Zuora. Zuora helps you monetize your services, unify revenue streams, bill with agility, and centralize your payment operations. Zuora powers recurring revenue at Bloomberg, Box, Toyota, GoPro, and so many others. Managing subscriptions is hard, and Zuora can help. Learn more at Zuora.com.
Thanks for joining us today, Akhil. So each episode, we like to kick things off with a little game of Never Have I Ever. Because as a product manager, you probably get pushed to do things outside what you initially thought possible. And no matter what, it magically gets done. So we wanted to bring your experience on the outside to the inside of the life of a PM and get to know you a little better at the same time. So Akhil, tell us a little bit about your Never Have I Ever.
Thanks, Kyle, Lucas, for the welcome. Really appreciate it. So honestly, I thought a lot about this Never Have I Ever, and there are so many things in life that, I have never experienced. But I think one thing that really changed my perspective of life in general was, I spent about 2 years of my life when I was in business school pretty alone without my family. And that was unfortunate because my wife and my 6-month-old daughter had to come and they ran into visa issues. So they couldn't really come for 2 years. And before that, I gave up a really high-flying career to pursue a dream to come to the US and pursue an MBA from here. And I was questioning myself a lot of times for those 2 years, whether I was doing even the right thing without my family and my kid. And I think that really changed my perspective on life, that, career is not really the only thing in life. You have so many other, things. You need such a big support of your family to be successful in life. And in those 2 years, it was the support system around my university, my friends, the connections that I made at school that helped me, overcome a difficult 2 years. And I joke that in my last 6 months of my MBA, I got my daughter over and she was alone with me, and me, my daughter, and the friend of mine, we were living together in a house, and literally my whole class took care of my daughter. So she used to come with me to my business school, sitting 8 hours in my classes, and literally my whole school got to know her. And even when I, post on social media today, everyone asks about, my daughter, Nora, as she goes by. So, that was a difficult time, but it really changed my outlook towards life and made me more compassionate, made me more, a little bit more emotional as well about, and I think made me realize that, world is so much more than just career or product management.
That's an interesting perspective. How old was your daughter, both at the, through this process? Because 2 years, that's a long time, particularly when you have a new family.
Yeah. So my daughter was about 6 months old when I came here. It was,
Oh, wow.
It was July 2016 when I came here. She was born in November 2015. So, she was supposed to come in a month or two, but that month or two took 2 years to almost,
Yeah. Well, that's
come by.
unbelievable. So
Right.
not only did you leave right almost after your daughter was born, those are some amazing times. So I can imagine how hard that could have been for you. And then you also bring up the fact that then your daughter actually came and was with you in business school for 8 hours when she was, what, 2.5?
Two and a
That's an
half, yep.
amazingly well-behaved daughter. Oh my
Very
goodness.
well behaved.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
My kids would not at that age sit and hang out. It'd be constant chaos. So that's pretty good.
My wife was in a different location and she had to leave my daughter with a grandparent, so she was moving around. And so
Mm.
she literally stayed with so many people that I think she just knew at a very early age, just to be calm and quiet in very strange surroundings. If I can, yeah, not ideal, but yeah, but
I don't know. I think you'll find that kids are amazing at adapting, and potentially she'll pull a lot of strength from that experience just because she was with so many, adults and serious situations, right? Like she was basically treated like an adult and
Right.
behaved like an
yeah,
adult, even so young, So I think you'll find that will be quite a boost to her in her life. I'm sure, So kids
absolutely.
Maybe
are
she's
quite
maybe,
adaptable.
maybe did she start a business afterwards, like do a lemonade stand after all that MBA work?
Maybe someday.
So, Akil, you mentioned two parts really about first one was obviously the support network of your friends, right? That
Mhm.
allowed you to kind of carry through for those 2 years. Obviously, it was important then. Was there other value that you got out of that tight those friendships that you've made during your time uh, at school? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to business school at Rice in Houston, and primarily that was it still is a very investment banking finance focused school. At that time, we didn't really have a lot of people going into technology per se. And I think a lot of connections, that I made there were, it was first of all a very diverse network. We had people from all over the world, right? Latin America, Europe, of course, America, India, China, etc. I think the biggest thing that I took away was that the way that all of us came together and solved problems, etc. I think that created a mindset within us, all of us, that we are in a global setting. A lot of businesses are done globally, of course.
Hmm.
At eBay, at Zora, you'll see people from all around the world, you know, in like projects and teams. And I think it gave a really interesting perspective of how different people think and work. So, before that, I was in India. We had you know, a different type of mindset of working out there. So that was literally my first exposure into, how people work in a different setting. That was one. I think MBA in general gives you a lot of very general skills. You get a very basic understanding of, hey, what does finance mean, for example, right? Like, how do you value a company at a very high level? I was very interested in finance at one point of time, and I thought I want to go and do finance because I had worked in investment banking. So I'd applied to this endowment fund, a very coveted fund, and I had to write DCF models and an equity report to get in. And I got in. Surprisingly, I still don't know. But, and that was through a network as well, because I think, people knew me and I was hardworking. And a lot of times I think people pay attention to, your hard work, etc. is important, but, the other qualities that you have of how you deal with people, how you interact with people, I think those are so important qualities to get, a nudge when you have a decision to be made. For me, I was very clear. I wanted to do a very general understanding of different businesses. So I took literally plethora of courses. Uh, and I still, those connections are not only with the friends, it's also with the professors, it's also with, some organizations that we worked with. So we just had a 5-year reunion and I went back and I was able to connect with a lot of friends who are now at, venture capital or private equity and those sort of positions. And, when they talk about stuff, I don't feel aloof. I'm not an expert of when they talk about leveraged buyouts, for example, but I can understand the term and I can relate and I can talk. And tomorrow, if I am, maybe there's an opportunity of us working together, we will. But in general, I think it opens up a lot of avenues. You just have to use it the right way.
So it gave you kind of a bit of a network, but it also gave you ability to kind of see how other business work, kind of what the finance operations are there. Did that give you kind of inspiration on, how you run your product or how you're thinking, a new product come out of some of those conversations with a very different groups of people?
So I think not really from a product lens, but I think the people that you work with, I think it gives a lot of relevance there. For example, if you are, in your field as well, a product person works with so many different groups, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes if you are working with, let's say, corporate strategy, they come up with a high level strategy. Hey, let's do this for the company. Now they think in a very different way. They are full of decks and they are full of, stories. Now, if you have, kind of had people who you worked with before or functions that you've worked with before, you're able to connect with them and you're able to understand the rationale. Not everything they are saying is true, but you have to pick out what is, the fluff versus or the noise from the actual meat. And I think when you know about some of this stuff, you are able to do that. Otherwise, a lot of times I've seen people, take for granted if, a higher executive is telling, hey, or a team is telling, hey, let's go and do this initiative. But you as a product guy, you have to figure out, a lot of details from those high level strategy decks that come out.
Kind of see the signal through the noise, right? Be able to kind of see that through all that, all these different filters. Yeah, that makes sense.
The other thing I would have used your network for, which is really fascinating, right? That you have now really contacts where folks went to different companies and have different perspectives, is that when you are challenged with like corporate strategy, right, you might actually have a friend outside to say, how do you look at the world? Why do you look at things from a corporate strategy perspective in that particular way? It's a great way to kind of sound out some of the ideas or experiences that you're having, broadly speaking, right? So that you can understand where other people are coming from. And of course, you've worked with a diverse group of folks who had different interests and maybe different, focused on different things. And so that's a great way to get an even broader perspective, not just from your experience over time, but just having a network that has had similar time to have various experiences that you can now compare and discuss. So it's great to have that to lean on and call in times when maybe you're not quite sure what's going on or how to interpret certain strategies or things that are going on. Very good. Wow. So lots of kind of really hard times for you on the MBA side, but so many great things coming out of it as well. And it sounds like you've learned a lot through that time. Do you find that product management is after that equally hard, or was that a really particularly interesting period of your life?
I've had a different perspective on product management than quite a bit of other folks, and maybe I can share a little bit. So, I mean, when even pre-MBA, when I was working as an engineer, as a business analyst, etc., I used to always think from the lens of, how would people use this product, for example. I think that's such an important thing. And what is the problem that we are solving? What is the outcome that we are interested in? Are we just doing something for the sake of checking the box, for example? There are so many things we do on a daily basis which are check the box things, right? But when we actually talk about delivering projects or delivering features or delivering outcomes, does it add any value? And I think that is my fundamental belief on product management. And I mean, after MBA, I went into corporate strategy at Dell and I worked in go-to-market as well. And I literally applied the same principles there as well. Like, what is the outcome that we are trying to drive? Is the outcome, just because, we have to do a project, or is the outcome going to, help us affect our bottom line, top line, for example, right? So those are things that you could apply outside of product, even if you're not building a feature, if you're, solving a project, solving a problem. Really, really, I think thinking from an outcome perspective and what is the ROI on that, for example? How would people use this new process or model or function? I think that is the key to, I think, being successful at even building products, because here the problem has just shifted from, you know, let's say a different organization to now you are building something which people are going to use. So that's the only difference, right? You're using technology to solve a problem. And I think that's how I kind of think that, you know, uh, the more that you are aware and you think in this model from an outcome driven perspective, I think the more successful you are in solving any problem, be it a product problem per se.
Gotcha. So whether it's product or process or whatever it might be that you're working on, you're recommending, look at the outcome, right? Assume that let's say you can snap your fingers, it's done. Have you arrived at a point of value that you were intending, right? Rather
Exactly.
than, because a lot of times when a problem's presented, people jump straight into the how, right? Like, oh, that's going to be hard, or we could definitely do it this way, et cetera. But like really getting a deep understanding of whether the outcome is what's desired, is it even worth it, right? But if you're anchored on that, that's then becomes a very strong vision and a motivating factor for everybody, because you know what you're shooting for, right? You've got the goals,
Exactly.
and the metrics should be easy to establish and things. Makes a lot of
I think,
sense.
but that's a challenge though. It's always like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Tends to uh, be sometimes the bigger challenge. But once you do, you're right. Once you do understand what is the problem we're trying to solve that has the outcome that we're trying to achieve, then things seem to lock in place. But I also, from my experience, it's always been good to keep revisiting that statement,
Exactly.
because sometimes when you go down that journey, you sometimes forget what that problem was, and you're going down somewhere, and all of a sudden you look back, going, "Is that what we started off with?" So
Right.
always going back to that, refreshing. What are we trying to solve? What is the outcome again? Is this really? Is that feature? Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're planning on? Will that adhere to that? That's a good checkpoint to keep you moving in the
Exactly.
right direction.
Yeah. And it reminds me of this very, I think, abused word in our world, which is North Star. When,
Oh yeah, it
when,
is. Yeah.
you know, I mean, when, of course, I mean, when we are saying North Star, we want to build the whole utopian product. But
Mhm.
a lot of times people get stuck in, hey, this is not North Star aligned, let's not do this, versus, looking into the immediate future, looking into, thinking, yes, you have to kind of think through, the perfect solution, but a perfect solution never ever exists, uh, right? So you have to build a solution that fits in, as perfectly as possible for your customers, for your team, for your organization. But if you just keep thinking, oh, I'm going to wait till I build the perfect solution, that point will never come.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think anyone. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that where I built the perfect solution and it's like, oh, it's ready to go. There's no problems. It's ready. It's perfect. Solves all the problems. It's always an iterative. You're going back and forth, checking. Sometimes you have to scratch it, do it over again, and I think that's part of the innovation. It's not like I think that theory of like the lone genius in the corner that comes up with the solution. I mean, it takes a team. It takes many types of iterations on it. Keeps plugging away,
Right,
validating with customer. It's not like you go in the corner and goes, I come up with a perfect product. We're ready to
right.
go. It's not that easy. Which I think is a good transition to the second segment where we talked about innovation, a little bit of therapy, maybe some wild tales. What's kind of top of mind for you as a PM? Like, what are you thinking of from an innovation standpoint?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as a PM, you always want to do this interesting, innovative work that, that is lying somewhere within the org, and, you want to start to do that. But at the same time, you also have your daily responsibilities, or things that have to be done. For example, I mean, a lot of times you're not really building new products in your world as well. There are, you know probably 50, 60, 70% of the times you are building iterative features on top of existing products. And I think there's a very big opportunity there to kind of rethink, especially if you are new to the team, or the org. And I think innovation can also mean thinking through a different lens. Like, for example, we have built a solution for, I work at eBay, I work in the customer support team where we build tools for our, what we call as teammates who solve problems for all the customers who reach out to us. Now, there are, our tech stack is fairly old. Improving that tech stack is an innovation in itself, right? Adding thinking from a different lens on, how do you provide some interesting data points to our teammates so that they can solve problems in a faster way and we have less customer churn. That is innovation as well, right? In my view. And I think that is something that if we all uh, as product managers think of our customers on an everyday basis, how they use their product, you will see so many things that you can improve. And I personally, for example, I shadow with a person using our product every week for an hour, and every week I feel like, oh my god, there is so much things that we can improve for their experience. But I have a backlog of that as well. So I'm saying that's one part of innovation, continuous improvement on your existing product.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is too is new gets flashy. Like the new thing's always the fun thing, that you go on stage, you show it off, but it's that incremental change you do with your core product or some of the products you just released a couple years ago to really drive out, drive up adoption, drive up real value from it. Tie into what the that customer, high NPS, happy with the product, and that's the kind of the harder grind, right? There's not as much glory, but the end state. You make a customer happy. You get, the product gets better. It keeps evolving. It's a very important skill, and that is true. That's innovation there as well.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I'll give one example more where I don't know how many of you have used eBay too much. But e- eBay is, if you see the experience now versus maybe a couple of years back, it's fairly different. And I'm not responsible at all for that. I cannot take any credit. But the team I work with, there's a very big focus on, eBay was a very buyer-centric company before. Now we have become a very buyer plus a seller-centric as well. And we want to give a lot of focus on how we treat our sellers. And some of the initiatives that I have worked over the last year or so on removing frauds and items that should not be on the marketplace and treating our sellers in a very fair way. I have seen, when I go in an Uber or go in a flight and I talk to, people who are with me, and then when they give me feedback, oh, like I was selling on eBay a few years back and I had this problem as a seller. Now it's improved considerably. That is, the kind of feedback that you want to look into. That's innovation, right? We didn't really do too many incremental, changes, but we have improved our processes, we have improved our features, we have improved our, of course, tech stack as well. That has all contributed to, this change in perception that sellers had previously. Sometimes it's, not really the sexy thing that is actually innovation, but the small things, they play a big part in improving.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, the best times from a product management from my side are always the ones where the customer recognizes the work that you've done, right? So the fact that you are having eBay customers come back to you, sellers, right, and say that the experience has fundamentally improved. I mean, that is just an amazing way to get feedback that things are being done correctly, right, and are moving in the right direction. It's always very, very encouraging and uplifting.
I think there's a lot of focus, especially since the last 6 months, about when AI and generative AI and how can this thing, help the whole organization, right? What are the key first initiatives use cases you want to look at? And I don't think AI is new. I mean, AI has always been there, right? I think it's been there since 1980s, but we didn't have the processing power at that time. Now, chat GPT and all these things have made it fairly accessible for all of us. I have been asked in the last few days to, consider, think about, how we can improve our some things using AI, for example. So uh, I think, it's going to be interesting conversation, and I'll lean back to maybe some of my network. I'm making new friends with you as well. Maybe to understand how different people are now using, AI to improve their customers' experience, maybe. And you don't really need to reinvent the wheel here, but you need to be stay up with the competition. That's so important.
That's right. That's right. And it is a very exciting technology. And of course, we've seen this come and go over the years, right? Different things. I mean, there was blockchain and Bitcoin, right? At one point, and everybody was
Correct.
super excited at, and as we're part of a billing system and payments ecosystem, right? That was a big deal. Like, should we invest there? The generative AI is definitely very hyped right now, and
Right.
folks are trying to see where the value is for the tool. Which I think comes back to your point is focus on the value, right? This is just yet another tool in the toolkit, technology
Exactly.
to get you where you need to go. But it is an exciting time, and nothing like trying it out, doing a prototype, fail fast, see if it actually does what it needs to do, learn from it, right? And be educated to provide feedback on what are those outputs that maybe you could get out of it using these new capabilities.
That's absolutely right. And I think the problem is in this new technology, it's flashy, and they don't think of it. How's it going to help the customer? Like,
Yeah.
it's still a tool, and you got to think it through the customer's lens of how it can make their lives easier when they're using it. Like you said, you shadow your customer. You can see how they're interacting with it. Is it making it easier for them? Are they just thinking, oh, it's flashy, you have this in there, but it's not saving me time. It's not helping me as a seller, and it's not really
Right.
working. But if it's really helping you as a seller, which was the target you were looking at, it's an opportunity to do that. It's good.
Are there any other things or insights that might want to point out with that kind of innovation? Are there other things you're thinking of, um, given what's going on out there in the market?
I think, I mean, currently the only big focus right now, especially, I mean, eBay as a company, we have a lot of different focus. I was just reading today about live streaming shopping as a $50 billion market. And, eBay started some initiatives there as well. I mean, I think TikTok has made it huge. So uh, I don't know the use case of why would people do live streaming shopping, but apparently, there is a use case there.
For that,
there.
right? Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's kind of like unboxing. There's my kids were all into unboxing videos where it's the excitement of getting something new. Maybe this is the excitement of window shopping with somebody else, except it's not window shopping, it's actual shopping, right? And you get more of
Right.
these opportunities from home, and you get to see more things, and there's people doing a commentary, and you get kind of that live feedback from, being with a friend, right, so to speak, there, and highlighting certain products, more like a curated fashion advisor sort of thing. I could see that work. I could see that
Or
would be
like a
interesting.
live
Right.
auction. Live auction, everyone's going back and forth bidding. I mean, that might be kind of exciting.
Yeah. eBay's launching, I think, either launched or launching that pretty soon. So
Okay.
that is going to be a very interesting as well. So,
Hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of tons of other interesting initiatives, but
Yep.
unfortunately, you cannot be part of everything, right? So
Right.
That's right.
you have to do your, day job and hope that, you get some exciting thing to work on or make, your day-to-day life interesting in other way possible. So I think that's another interesting thing about product management that people don't realize. A lot of students come back to me and say, hey, I want to do product management. I want to launch this and launch that. And a very fundamental question I ask is, why do you want to do that? And they have, no answer. Just because it is in
Cool.
the news, cool,
Mm.
is that, and there are so many good other cool things that, you could go and do. But we've all been there, right? In general, 80% of our time is spent on, tasks that are fairly, mundane, for example, and you have to do those tasks well to succeed.
That's
Think,
good. No, Akil, I think you've brought up a really interesting point. And the reason why I will pick it up is because we have a segment called PM power move. Let's get into the real day-to-day. What are one of the things that kind of surprised you about being PM from a day perspective, where you never thought you'd have to do that, right? Because of what goes on day to day, right? So are there some interesting stories there that you found you were just surprised, you knew what you were going to do that day, and it just went completely differently than you thought?
Yeah, so I think, of course, we have our meetings set up, our calendars are always full with, a new product discovery, talking to our customers, talking to engineers, scrum calls, etc. Right? But I think what people sometimes don't realize is that, a PM's, at least, a PM's job is to get work done, right? Sometimes if you don't have things which are not working out, you can't really say and go back to people to say, hey, I didn't have a program manager connect with, didn't send out this report, and that's why, we were not able to get the other team aligned. So sometimes you have to pick up slack of other people's work, and that is part of the job. And sometimes you have to pick up job of a program manager. Sometimes you have to pick up job of a data analyst. Sometimes you have to pick up job of, maybe an engineer, and get into, details like, hey, what is the API giving us, and those kind of details. So I think it's a very adaptable role, which I like personally, but at the same time it has its challenges that you don't really get to work on. When you come into morning and say, hi, I'm going to work 2 hours creating this 6-page strategy document, and then there's a production issue that came in, and then you are there the whole night trying to fix it, and that strategy document is postponed for the next few days, right? And these kind of things happen all the time. And I think we have to, as a PM, you have to be very adaptive to do all of these roles. I mean, even in my job, even probably in your job, you have seen, I mean, on a very daily basis, we have to deal with, I mean, you
Oh
have
my
to
goodness,
take
yeah.
over other people's jobs sometimes to get work done.
The
And
show must
that's
go on, right?
exactly.
You play many hats. You're right. You're either working on the strategy deck, strategy concepts, work on design the product. You're talking to customers. You're doing podcasts. I mean, you're pretty much doing everything. It's the role of the PM.
Exactly. And for people who are, don't like talking to people or don't like interacting with people and want to sit in a corner, the role is not meant for them. Or I've seen people who are not successful at this role because, it's a very relationship driven role as well. A small relationship here and there can, help things move, 6 months sometimes.
Like it's all very soft, right? Very, very soft influence because, it's not really, people don't report all to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have engineering report to me, right? And yet ultimately they're the ones building this stuff. So it's all a lot of aligning and soft influence to get things done. Absolutely right. Good point.
And also, again, ground it with the customer and you ground it with the vision, and you have them kind of being part of that vision helps too, right? It's always hard when someone comes to you and goes, I have this vision, do it. But if you go, hey, let me think about this vision with you, and you work with an engineer or when your counterparts or whoever, and they kind of contribute to that vision, it makes it so much easier to get that alignment across all different groups, which helps drive forward what you want to do. So it's again, you're playing many hats.
Great point, Kyle. Yeah. I mean, I always like to think of sometimes when I go and especially if you're in a new team, new product, if, go with their mindset that, seek for help from them because they probably know so much more than you. And sometimes they can contribute so much more on product ideas and features because you don't know it too well at this point. You are just theoretical versus they are more practical and in the weeds. And I've had so much great advice coming from engineering teams on improving things, having them as a partner rather than just me telling them, hey, go and do this work that I created on a PRT versus, hey, why don't you contribute to the PRT as well?
Exactly. Yeah, the partnership is huge. Yeah, getting them to contribute to that is the key.
Right.
Yeah. You can't design stuff that can't be built, right? And
Right.
you want to build things that don't drive a value to the customer. So it has to be a partnership between the two parties for sure. And obviously the customer and hopefully in alignment, as Kyle said, with the company vision, right? You're not just building something that's outside of that scope. Very, very, very cool. Any other insights or like crazy emails you've gotten or calls from, customers or maybe any of the partners that you're working with that kind of, was a surprise to you recently?
So I wouldn't really call it crazy, and I gave it a good thought. Uh, but I think uh, we had a fairly broad discussion last week, and I'm sure everyone has this 3 or 4 different teams working on an initiative, and you're reaching nowhere for like weeks, and you've built all sort of prototypes, and you've built all sort of like design approaches, options, but you've reached a stalemate on how do we proceed next, because it's a partnership between different teams, and we've been in stalemate for a couple of weeks on
Mhm.
this. So I think there was an interesting thread that went along, that how do we get out of this stalemate, and a couple of business teams and product managers, they came along and we said, let's get into a room and get into a 5-hour discussion and solve this, rather than having 5 1-hour meetings on a daily basis. Let's lock ourselves in a room and we will not come out till we get this done. So till we
That's
at least have a
awesome.
direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So break through the analysis paralysis thing, right? Or just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Wow. That's very cool. Yeah, that's true. A good plan now is better than a perfect plan later, right? In some instances, and just pick a direction and then you can always iterate because management's all about change, right? It's not about perfection. So that's awesome. So it sounds like did it really take 5 hours and did you guys come out with a direction?
So, I mean, we had a 4-hour session today, and
Aha.
we
Today.
came out. Yeah, it was today morning, 7 a.m. to like 11 or 12. But we did come out with an hypothesis and a direction. And I think what really helped was getting in some key players into the room as well, which we didn't have before. So sometimes,
Mm,
you are, as PMs or engineers, you think, hey, I'm doing the right stuff. But then you bring in, let's say, someone who's actually on the ground and who sees this on a day-to-day basis. And in this case, it was our director of operations, and we brought him in. And they provided so much additional perspective that, so we actually, ruled out few options, and we said, we were thinking this wrong throughout.
yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, this really circles back to even the very beginning of your story is just getting those diverse perspectives in sometimes can break
Exactly.
through, right? For you. So yeah, never never a way to seek out additional data, right, on the off chance that will break through. And it sounds like also putting a little bit of pressure on making the decision, a little bit of a deadline, right, really helps to get things moving along and get the creative juices flowing. Very, very interesting insight. Cool.
Yeah.
And nothing like
Awesome.
putting that pressure on, either get in or get out. It's like kind of the actually moves into our next segment, and this I think kind of that where another hat you wear as a PM is the art of saying no. And so this is a segment we call ship it or skip it. I'm gonna throw a couple things to you. You can just say, "Yep, we'll ship it. It sounds good," or "Nope, skip it, get rid of it." So first
Okay.
one, we're gonna go with Bitcoin.
So,
Are you still on
okay.
the ship it or skip it bandwagon for Bitcoin?
Okay. Okay. I'm going to skip it because I don't know too much about Bitcoin.
Okay, good.
Good.
All right. AI.
uh, Ship it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Working from the office.
Uh, Ship it.
Okay. Okay. And this is something I actually found on eBay, but flaming hot Cheetos lip balm.
Ship it. I'm sure there is a market somewhere.
There it is. It's on eBay. You can find it. I found it very crazy that it existed. I thought that like, you want something soothing on your lips, not burning Cheetos, but it's a thing.
Well, it's on eBay. There's got to be a market for it, right? Otherwise, why
Yeah,
would you have a seller? I had a couple of ship it or skip it things, but I was going to ask you about an MBA. Would you, given your past experience, would you recommend it or not?
I think it depends. And I think it depends on, I think, couple of things. I can elaborate a little bit more here. It's not for everyone, probably. It's also very expensive. I was very lucky to get a fairly big scholarship and, to get it. But, and it's not for everyone because a lot of people I've seen, they don't really get value out of it. And, they see. So if someone really dedicates themselves and they are very passionate about moving into a certain direction, I think it's really helpful. But in this age, on YouTube and so many other things that you can do, you probably, if there's a skill you want to learn, you don't really need to be an MBA to do that.
Great insight. And maybe not last, but maybe not least, and being without your family for 2 years.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go through that again. So skip that.
Definite skip. Okay.
Definite.
Excellent. Perfect. Excellent. Oh, that's my list, Kyle. Anything else on your side?
No, I think that was good. Thank you for joining us today, Akhil. We look forward to keeping up with you and see what you're doing.
Thanks for having me here. Really enjoyed the conversation.
My major takeaways really came out of using where you've come from. So Akhil talked about his MBA experience and just the things that came out of that, the social network, some of the foundations that I'm sure he continues to use today. And then out of that experience working with a diverse group, getting additional perspectives and understanding that you're not necessarily the only one that needs to make the breakthrough. You're not the only one with the ideas. Use the partners you're working with, right? Whether that's your engineers, whether that's your customers, whether that's your sales, right? Whoever it is. And then, when you have all these options and you have a tough time breaking through, go out there and seek out different perspectives, whether that was from the director of operations that was brought in, right? Or other things. And again, also putting yourself in a particular time box or a deadline really helps with that because if you keep pushing, you'll find a breakthrough. So those were kind of my key takeaways.
It takes a team to launch a product and keep that product alive. It takes a village, right? So it's very important. I think with I can relate being a PM wearing multiple hats and doing different things and having to do things just to move the product forward. I like the focusing on what is the problem we're trying to solve. Right, I think that again gets lost and making sure that we did joke about North Star, but that is a good focus on it, and making sure you have the right outcomes. And if you drive that kind of helps drive your product to where you want to go.
Really great discussion. Really enjoyed Akhil being on, and looking forward to perhaps chatting with him again in the future. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and tune in next time for our next episode of our show.